and welcome to episode 75 of the Tea and Possibilities podcast. I am Nikki and this is a podcast all about knitting, crochet and making all the things here in northwest London. You can find me on Instagram at hippie_Nikki and I'm Nikki Hippie on Ravelry, and if you search for Tea and Possibilities under the groups tab on Ravelry, you will find our group right there along with a chatter thread about this episode. I will link to all of that just down below in the box. As always, I want to kick off by saying a massive welcome to any new viewers. Thank you so much for giving the podcast a shot. And to my returning viewers, thank you so much for coming back every episode. I really do appreciate it. Just to flag, today is a bit of an odd one in London. It is June, but it is very, very grey and dark out. So we might have some shifts in light. Also, we're in lockdown. People have to find things to do. So my mum and my nan are redecorating in the room next door. They are keeping it really, really quiet, but if you do hear some ambient noise, that's what it is. We don't leave the house anymore, so we have to make our own entertainment. And because of the weather and because of lockdown, I have just decided to keep my enormous NASA sweatshirt on because I was gonna dress up a little bit more and I was cozy and it's a bit chilly. So, forgive me. I put eyeliner on. Today's tea is another bird and blend, and this one is called Nearly Nirvana, which is a luxury white silver needle tea with spiritual spearmint and heavenly jasmine to help you reach nirvana. Now, I nearly put this back when I pulled it because I don't like spearmint. I hate spearmint chewing gum, I hate spearmint anything. Toothpaste is the other thing you get in minty flavours. I don't like soft mints that are spearmint flavoured, so I don't have high hopes for this. It smells really, really good though. I really like the combination of the jasmine and the spearmint, so that smells good. That's actually really nice. That's actually really, really nice. That's really good. It just has so much more body than a usual mint tea because of the blend. Wow. Okay, Bird and Blend, you do know your stuff because this is gorgeous and I don't like spearmint. Now, before we get into the podcast, there is something really, really important I want to say right here at the top. I'll be talking about this more in Knit and Natter, but I don't think that this is a subject that can be tucked away and compartmentalised towards the end of the podcast. I want to state here really, really clearly that I support the Black Lives Matter movement. There will be people who do not agree with me, but I do not want to see any comments below about all lives mattering. Because until black lives are valued in our society the way white lives are, all lives do not matter. We want to reach a point where all lives do matter. And in order to do that, we need to focus on the Black Lives Matter right now. We can support this movement in many, many ways. Again, I'll be talking about it more at the end of the podcast, but you can write to your representatives, you can attend protests, you can share educational resources on your social media, you can educate yourself, your family, your friends, your children. These are all things that you can do. Practical, physical things that will help you become an anti-racist ally and will help this movement. I have talked before about how I have grown up in an incredibly diverse area of London, but I have white privilege and I need to work to be anti-racist. I have done a lot of reading and a lot of educating myself over the last year, and I've learned an awful lot about my internalized racism, and I hope that I have grown and that I have changed and that I am doing better than I was a year ago. And I would invite you all to do the same. Now, I want to make clear before I talk more about this in Knit and Natter that I will be deleting any racist comments here in the group or on my social media. And just to be clear, I am not doing that to silence detractors. I am doing that to ensure that this is a safe space for everyone. And I do not want people of colour coming to watch this podcast and finding vitriol in the comments below. I won't have it, and they will be removed. If that is not something you can get on board with, the unsubscribe button is right down there. Now, as I said, I'll be talking more about this in Knit and Natter, but let's move on to Whipped Up. I'm going to be really honest here and say that my mojo has come and gone quite a lot the last few weeks since the last episode. I was on a really good finishing kick and I've kind of ground to a little bit of a halt, really. But I do have things to show you. I have been working on my Cozy Stripes blanket, but barely, so I'm not going to pull that out again because it is folded just over there on my armchair and I don't want to create more mess. But I have been working on it. I haven't finished the magic ball, but I will be using the clasped weft join in future. And thank you to Hazel for telling me that that was what it was called, because I couldn't find it because I was calling it in completely the wrong thing. So thank you so much for that. Next up, we have my Kerry Town. Now this is the Kerry Town by Annie Lupton. It is knit out of Willow and Lark Ramble in Oxblood, or I should say more accurately, unknit out of Willow and Lark Ramble in Oxblood, because yes, we only have ribbing. Basically, I sat down to correct the mistake that I spotted while I was filming last time and I could not for the life of me figure it out. And I kept pulling and reknitting and pulling and reknitting, and I just got to a point where I thought, you know what, I'm annoying myself, this isn't fun, I'm just gonna rip back and start again. Which I did, I ripped back and I've yet to start again. I will sit down with this at some point in the coming week and try and get a few rows in. And thank you to the commenter who pointed out that I've got to do the pattern twice, because I was slightly worried about row gauge, because I thought there's no way that's going to be long enough to be a jumper. But of course I hadn't read far enough forward in the pattern, because that's just not what I do. I'm a bit more a fly by the seat of my pants kind of gal. So yeah, I'm really sorry that there's not more garment to show you, but I just pulled it out. I decided, at first I really wanted to figure it out because I thought this is a learning moment and I can become a better knitter by learning to read the cable pattern of my knitting and figure this out. And then I just thought, I knit for fun, I knit for pleasure, and by doing it I do get better, but we're in lockdown. There is a global pandemic. Life is not easy. I'm just gonna pull it out and start again. You know, it's not ideal, but it'll be fine. Also, there seems to be a lot of motorbikes driving around. I don't know why. Maybe people are ordering food, I don't know. But those are the two projects that I have been showing the last couple of weeks, the Cozy Stripes and my Kerry Town, and not much work has been done on them. However, I do have some work to show because we are in the summer of sock cow and I have two socks to show you. The first is one that's pretty much halfway knit already and I only cast this on Thursday. This is a cuff down vanilla sock based on my recipe that I worked out when I watched the Meanwhile at the Castle tutorials, and I am knitting it out of West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply. The yellow is turmeric, I think. I'm gonna check that. Yes, it is called turmeric. I think I kept calling it mustard before, but it's turmeric because it's from their spice collection, of course, yes. And Kingfisher is the main body because I'm obsessed with their Country Birds collection. I nearly said series, but I mean collection. And it is getting really dim and grey out, so atmospheric, guys, isn't it cozy? But I cast this on because I wanted Zoom knitting. I spend an awful lot of my working day on calls, either on Teams or Skype or Zoom, and it's very easy when you're on a call to try and multitask, which means that you often miss things in the meeting, and you wouldn't do that if you were in a meeting at work. You wouldn't be answering your emails while in a meeting, you would be listening and taking notes. So I find that knitting during my meetings is really, really useful because it helps me focus, but it keeps my hands busy. It fulfills that need to be active and doing instead of just peering into the abyss of Zoom. So yeah, as you can see, I had a lot of calls and I was just able to go round and round and round, and I started the heel last night. So I've just got to put the heel flap in, do the heel turn and pick up the stitches. I want to do that this weekend because I don't want to turn the heel and be picking up stitches on calls. I just want to be working round and round. Happy to do the gusset decreases, but that's about as much thought as I can give it during meetings. I have missed knitting socks. I have really missed it. And I have to admit, I think I talked about this the last episode, or the episode before, where I said that, you know, I wasn't sure about running the Cal because I wasn't sure if I was, you know, mentally kind of available to do so. And I also was a bit like, oh, I don't know if I want to knit socks. And then I remembered how easy it is and how much I love it. And so that's been a bit of a gift. So thank you to everybody who encouraged me to go ahead with the knit along. I really appreciate that. And as always with the West Yorkshire Spinners balls, they're enormous. I could probably get 4 socks out of this. I really need to figure out what to do with my West Yorkshire Spinners. It always ends up in my advent swaps, but then I still always have tons left. But I'm not mad keen about knitting another pair of socks when I've already got a pair in that colourway. So we will see. However, that is not the only pair of socks I cast on. Now, if you remember, last year I decided that I wanted to take the summer of socks as an opportunity to challenge myself. And last year I had a go at toe-up socks. I mean, let's not talk about the fact that I only finished them like a month ago. And that was great. It really encouraged me to try something new, and I was really happy with them when I finally finished them. And so I thought, I would like to do something that pushes me a little bit out of my comfort zone this year, but without being too mentally demanding. Because as we know, I found the toe-up socks to be a bit of a drain because I kept having to sit and think and watch how-tos, and I'm just not there at the moment to be doing that. So I thought I'm gonna try and do a really, really simple patterned sock. Now, my first thought was the Hermione's Everyday sock because I've heard wonderful things about it. The World and Her Wife has knit the Hermione's Everyday sock, and that is by Erica Luda, if you haven't heard of it before. But then the lovely Kalisha of the Quirky Monday podcast got in touch with me about providing some prizes for the Summer of Socks. We're going to come to prizes later, don't you worry. And I took a look at some of the ones that she was going to donate, and I decided to purchase the Eltanin. I'm going to check that name again. Eltanin. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. It's named after the head star of the Draco constellation, so I absolutely love that. I'm a bit of a nerd for things like that, so I really liked that. I really liked that detail. I thought that was a really lovely thing. So I decided that I would knit these. They are textured down the front of the leg and the top of the foot. I've had a quick look through the pattern. It looks pretty straightforward. It looks like something I can memorize fairly easily, and they also look really satisfying. I wasn't really looking for something cabled or lacy because that's a bit too much, and I don't know how much wear I'd get out of them, whereas these just look like they have a really nice squishy texture. So I will show you how far I've got. It's not far. I only cast this on yesterday, so I've only done the cuff so far. Now this is out of some leftovers of stranded Dyeworks. I cannot for the life of me remember which colourway this is. Let me see if I can find out. This is First Frost, and it is left over from the Colour Affection that I knit entirely out of stranded Dyeworks. And the reason that I have gone for this grey is because I want to knit the sock out of this. I don't know if you remember this. I think I had this caked up along with a couple of other skeins for the Summer of Socks last year, and I just didn't get to it. But this is Binti by Third Vault Yarns on their companion sock, and it is gorgeous. I don't know if you remember me talking about this when I bought it, but I bought this from Unravel. Was it last year? I think it was last year. Did I go to Unravel last year? There was one I didn't go to Fibre East last year because I went on holiday. I went to Unravel. I got this from Unravel, yes. And I had to buy this because I had just finished reading Binti on the train on my way to Unravel, so it seemed like a sign. And I wanted to use this, but I also wanted to do a contrast heel and toe. And I didn't have a blue or like a corally orange that was similar enough. So I thought that the grey would make the best contrast because it's kind of neutral enough. Also, Binti is a sci-fi novel, so I kind of thought the grey was a little bit like metallic and sci-fi and spaceships. while the colourway from Third Vault Yarns makes reference to Binti the character and her roots in the Himba tribe. So yeah, I'm excited to get this added. I was having a chat with a friend last night, which is when I finished working on the cuff, and I really wanted to add this in, but I just didn't have the brain space to have a conversation and also take in a pattern. So I think probably what I'm gonna do, I always tell myself that as soon as I finish filming I will start editing because then it's done, but I won't. I will probably pop on a podcast and make a start on the patterns because I really want to see how this knits up and how it plays with the pattern. So there we go, I have 2 cast-ons for the summer of socks. I think the West Yorkshire Spinners one will be pretty much finished by the time we have the next episode, because if it's Zoom knitting it's gonna Zoom because I spend way too much time on video calls these days. But now let's talk about the summer of socks, because I have had some really generous donations from people and I would like to share them with you now. I'm just going to grab my laptop so that I can read them out because my eyesight is atrocious and I have to lean, so we're just gonna, it's fine. So first up we have the Eltanin Socks. So those are the ones that I am knitting out of my Third Vault yarns, and that has been donated by Kalisha of the Quirky Monday podcast, and we have 2 of those to give away. And as I said, the Eltanin socks are textured down the front and you will be seeing them knit up over the next couple of episodes. Next up, we have a couple of patterns donated by Gemma of the Project Bag podcast. So she has donated 2 copies of her Lara's Legacy pattern, and she will also be making a donation to Bliss, the charity Bliss, for those 2 patterns. Gemma is currently looking to raise £1,000 for the charity Bliss in memory of her little girl. So I'm going to put a link to her fundraising page just below so that you can take a look at that and find out a bit more. Gemma has also donated one of her old school socks patterns. That felt like a real mouthful, a tongue twister. Her old school socks patterns. So there is one of those up for grabs as well. Books and Horses will be donating the Flores sock by Hoki Locatelli, who is currently using that pattern to raise money to support the COVID appeal. So Snowy Thistle Knits, and yes, as you watch this, this will sound perfectly fine, but I have stumbled over that name so many times. So thank goodness for editing. But Snowy Thistle Knits will be donating a copy of her Weed Ram socks and her Courage Cow. And finally, we have Winnie Wombat, who will be donating a copy of her Chocablock Socks, Self-Compassion, Invisible Heartstrings, and Cuff Down Vanilla. So there are 4 patterns there up for grabs. So that is a total of 12 pattern prizes. Thank you so much to everybody who contacted me to make a donation. I massively appreciate it. If you would like to donate a copy of a pattern, please do let me know. We are going to be pattern prizes only for this cow, for various reasons, but if you do want to make a donation, just send me a DM on Ravelry and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you are a sock designer, I really encourage you to share the love for your socks in our chatter thread. If you would like to offer a coupon code, you can mention it there as well. It's so chilly out, so chilly. There are a couple of things that I wanted to share with you before we move on to knit and natter. And the first is a non-knitting thing. So I spotted these on Instagram. These are by The Finest Imaginary, and they are fabric patches to put on garments, I guess. But I thought these would look great on my yellow hide and hammer bag. So this is the Great Indoors 2020, which is kind of, you know, I feel like it's a good thing to pop on my bag, so I just kind of had to get that, and then it'll all be reet. For non-UK based viewers, reet is a northern expression basically meaning all right, and I thought those 2 on my little bag would look really lovely, and they're kind of sentiments that I need to keep really front in my brain at the moment because, you know, the great indoors. There are things that we can be doing indoors to make it great, and it will be all right in the end. So I treated myself to those. And this came this morning. This is a Sincerely Louise kit. I'm not going to pull it all out but I think I can get the pattern out. So I don't know if you remember, but I knit myself a Sincerely Louise dinosaur head a few years ago, 2017 I think. And my cousin has had a little baby and he turned 1 in March. Obviously we haven't seen him for several months. And I said I would knit him his little dinosaur head as well. So this is a miniature version and it's in blues. So I'm going to do him a little dinosaur head, and I think I'm going to get some felt and make like an applique felt banner of his name and like hang it round the trike's head, because why not? So this is something I'll be working on soon, and then kind of wrap it up to hand it over the doorstep, I guess, for them. It's a very delayed first birthday present, but Sincerely Louise was out of stock for quite a while there, so I've only just managed to get hold of it, and he's only 1, he's not gonna know. But yeah, so I've picked that up, and that will hopefully be something that will knit up quite quickly, and I will obviously not give it away or deliver it until I have shown it on the podcast here. But that's it for Whipped Up. That's everything I'm working on. That's a little bit about the Summer of Socks Cal and a little bit about what's coming up, some stash enhancement. So let's move on to Knit and Natter. As I said at the top of the episode, I will be talking about Black Lives Matter here. I'd like to reiterate what I said at the top of the episode, which is if you don't like that, you can unsubscribe from the podcast, but this is a channel. I am a person who absolutely 100% supports the movement, and I'm doing my best to educate myself. And there will be people, as I said, who do not agree with that and would prefer me to stick to knitting, and that's just not me. And it would be inauthentic of me to not bring my beliefs and my passions into this podcast. So as I've said, if that's not something you agree with, you can unsubscribe, you do not have to watch, and I'm reiterating again, I will be removing any comments below that make this an unsafe space for people of colour. Now, with that being said, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do to educate ourselves around this movement. Now, I have, as I've said on previous episodes, I have been really struggling with reading lately. I've found it difficult to focus and to concentrate and to retain the information on the page, and I'm still experiencing that. So reading books, which is what I have done over the past year, has not been something that is available to me at this time. However, the wonderful thing about the time in which we live is that we have social media, and there are so many other ways that we can learn and we can educate ourselves. So if, like me, you're struggling with your concentration, or if reading just isn't your thing, there are so many other ways that you can take on information and educate yourself. So first of all, let's start with viewing. I watched The 13th when it came out a few years ago. It is directed by Ava DuVernay, who directed something else that I'm going to mention shortly, and it is a documentary about the incarceration of Black people in America. I would really recommend this, and I personally am going to rewatch it because, as I said, I watched it when it first came out, I think in 2016 or 2017. But at the moment, it is actually available on YouTube, and I will link it below. So if you don't have Netflix, you can still watch it. Ava DuVernay also directed When They See Us, which is available on Netflix. And it is about the boys who were convicted in the Central Park jogger case. They're often collectively referred to as the Central Park Five, but their names are Kevin, Antron, Raymond, Yusuf, and Corey. This is a 4-part drama, and it is one of the most difficult things I have ever watched. And I am able to say that as a privileged white person who never has to experience these things. And it is heartbreaking. So there is a trigger warning that I would like to put on it. I think it is something that is essential and necessary viewing, but it is heartbreaking. And the people involved in making it, the young actors, the talent of them is absolutely incredible. And I would, distressing though it is, I would highly recommend it. You also know that I love a good podcast. I love video podcasts and I love audio podcasts. I find audio podcasts particularly good at the moment because when I go out for a walk, I can listen to them and I can have them playing while I knit or while I clean. Depending on what I'm doing at work, I sometimes have a podcast on if I'm not writing, if I'm pulling numbers, for example. It's not distracting to have a podcast playing. So podcasts are a really, really good way to educate yourself. So I would first of all recommend About Race by Rennie Edo-Lodge. You may recognise her name because she is the author of Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, which is a fantastic book that I do recommend you check out if you haven't already. She has asked that if you buy or borrow the book, you make an equivalent donation to a Black Lives Matter charity or a charity that supports the movement in some way. But she does have this podcast as well. There are also a couple more that I'm working through, which is the Black History Buff and Witness Black History. I think these podcasts are incredibly important when it comes to educating yourself. I think we do have to understand the history of what has happened, why and how we have gotten to this point. We really, really do need to understand that and to confront it. Another way in which you can do this is, I will link it below if it is still available, but a young person called Esme has been collecting responses to a questionnaire asking about what you were taught in history if you were based in the UK. I have long been aware, and I have bent many a person's ear about this, that my history education was fairly limited. We tended, it seemed to me, to revolve around the Tudors, the Second World War, limited sections of the Second World War, I would hasten to add. And I remember doing the suffragettes, and I remember doing Mary Queen of Scots. But on the whole, there were great swathes of history that were left out. We did the American Civil Rights Movement, but we never did anything about the British Civil Rights Movement. We never learned about the role of women of colour during the suffragette movement. That is something I've learned about more recently. That has long troubled me. A lot of what I know about non-white history is stuff that I have taught myself through just an interest and a desire to know more. And I have been very, very lucky in my friends who have found out things and knowing that this is the kind of thing I'm interested in have shared it with me. So what I would recommend you do is fill in this questionnaire. As I said, if it's still available to fill in, I will leave it below. But I would also recommend that you contact your local MP and talk about this. Now, I'm not a teacher, but to my knowledge, the curriculum varies slightly and other people will have had a more diverse history education than me. But considering where I grew up and the fact that I grew up in a very diverse area of London, it is concerning to me that I was taught what is essentially a pro-empire, a pro-colonisation history, a whitewashed history, and that's not okay. I think that history is something that we need to learn in all of its naked negativity in order not to repeat it. History should be a lesson and not propaganda. So I would really recommend throwing your voice behind this questionnaire and writing to your MP and saying that there needs to be more education. And for me, I think it would be really important to teach about Britain's colonial past and the damage that it has done to the entire world that we live in. Because only in teaching that can we understand it and therefore dismantle it and learn from it so that we don't do it again. If we do not learn the negative impact of history, how can we avoid repeating those same mistakes? And so that has been something that over the past couple of years I have become very, very aware of, the whitewashing of our history. And it's not okay. And it is something that we as individuals need to work to change. We need to educate ourselves about becoming anti-racist in the here and now. And we also need to educate ourselves about our history. And we need to make sure that that is a well-rounded education. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you some resources, some ways in which you can educate yourself, learn more and support the movement. I hope that was useful, and I hope that perhaps while working on your socks for the Summer of Socks that you will have a listen to some of these things, or watch some of these programs, or potentially read something about it. I would really encourage you to take this opportunity, if it is available to you, to find designers and dyers of colour. And you know, if you're looking to try a new sock pattern or get some new sock yarn for the cowl, this is a great time to support those people. And I would really, really encourage you to do so. Well, that's it for this week. I hope that you are keeping safe and well. We live in troubling, stressful and worrying times, and I really, really do hope that wherever you are and whatever you're doing, that you are keeping safe and well. If you are a key worker, thank you as always for the work you're doing to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to keep us fed. I really do appreciate it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you very soon for another cup of tea. Take care. Bye. Then we have a couple of patterns from Sew. Then we have I'm really not doing well with S's today. I'm gonna have to do so much editing. It's too many S's. Socks.